Guys, most people think that the economy hurts you during the recessions, but the real damage often happens during the normal years when people stop paying attention. Now, if you want to understand what 2026 is really shaping up to look like and how to protect yourself financially, stay with me on this video, okay? I'm going to break this thing down in plain English. Then I'm going to show you exactly how to keep more of your money this year. Now, let's start with inflation because that's what people feel every single day, right? Right now, core inflation, that's the inflation without food and energy, is sitting around 2.6%. That sounds pretty good until you compare it to the past, the recent past. Back in 2022, guys, inflation peaked at roughly around 8%. That was the highest level that we had seen in 40 years, just a little over 3 years ago. So yes, inflation has come down a lot, but here's what matters. Inflation coming down does not mean prices went back down. We know they won't. It just simply means that prices stopped rising so fast. So to put this in perspective, okay, in January of 2025, a year ago, inflation was still around 3%, core CPI inflation. Now in January of 2026, that core CPI inflation is only modestly lower at 2.6%. And that's why groceries still feel expensive. We're still feeling the pain of that 8% inflation from a few years ago. It just got compounded into the inflation that we're feeling today. That's why insurance and utility bills, they all still feel painful, right? And they haven't went any lower. And that's also why your credit card balances are now at record highs, okay? Not because people are always so reckless with their money, but because cash flow has been under pressure for the last several years. Now, 2025 was not a collapse year. Let's be real with it, right? Let's be honest. It was a pressure year, but it was not an economically horrible year, right? I don't care what CNN or Fox or ABC or NBC or your favorite YouTuber tells you. It wasn't that bad a year. But was it a great year? No, it wasn't a great year either. Now, let's talk about interest rates and the Federal Reserve because this is important. In January of 2025, last year, the Fed funds rate was sitting near its recent peak, its recent high, at 5.25% to 5.5%. That was the range that the Fed funds rate was. Since then, the Fed has cut rates several times. As we've entered into January 2026, the Fed funds rate now sits at a range of 3.5% to 3.75%. So yes, the Fed funds rate has come down, but they're still much higher than what people got used to back 10, 15 years ago, right? Now, here's something important for 2026. There's 8 scheduled Federal Reserve meetings this year. The first FOMC meeting of 2026 happens in about 3 to 4 weeks, January 28th of this year. And also keep in mind, in May, we're going to get a new Fed chair. Whatever leadership changes like that, markets usually get a little noisy because it's uncertainty in terms of the direction that the Fed is going to go in next based on this new leadership. But here's the key point that I want you to hear and take away. You cannot build your financial life around guessing what the Fed may or may not do with the Fed funds rate. We can't control that. That's not a plan. That's just hope. Now, let's talk about the stock market, and this one's important too. Now, I'm going to go back to 2024. In 2024, the S&P 500 returned about a 23% annual rate. Last year in 2025, the stock market was still strong, but it was slower. The S&P 500 finished the year up roughly 16%. That includes dividends, okay? So stocks actually in 2025, they did very well. Not as well as 2024, but 16% is nothing to sneeze at, right? Here's the part people miss about the stock market. The gains in 2025 were a bit uneven. A relatively small group of large, high-quality companies, the Googles and the NVIDIAs and the Microsofts, they really carried the stock market and did most of the work. So depending on what you owned in 2025, you either had a great year because you had some of those Mag 7, those big tech stocks, or you had sort of a frustrating year, right? And let me say this. Some people have recently said that my videos on this channel are taking a more positive twist. And why is he being so positive? He must have been talked to by somebody. No, here's why I'm being so positive now. Folks, I'm just reporting what is happening, okay? There is good and bad. There's positive and there's negative going on in our economy. But I'm not trying to sit here and totally scare you just for clicks, right? by giving you all the bad stuff, all the stuff that caused you to be fearful, right? Fear sells. But I'm not trying to sell it on this channel. I'm not CNN or MSNBC. I don't need to sell you all the worst parts of the economy. But I'm also not going to try to make it seem like everything is wonderful in the economy either, because it's not. This ain't Fox News either. We have to understand that an S&P 500 that finished at 16% as an annual return is a very good annual rate of return, guys. I'm not going to constantly try to spin it as if it's negative when it's not negative. Like, we have to recognize the good that's happening in the economy as well in order to get the real full picture. So I'm just here to inform you and make you aware, not to scare you, not to sell you panic. I'm going to give you the good, the bad, the bitter, the sweet. Now, with that said, let me say this about the stock market. It's fair to say that a strong stock market does not automatically mean strong household finances. You can have good returns in the stock market and still feel broke if your money isn't managed well, or you have too much debt, or you're scared and focused on all the macroeconomic things going on instead of being focused on managing your own household. Look, every market has its good and its bad, and we have to be honest in how we present the information. On this channel, you're not going to get all the doom and gloom. Now, that's why every video, I spend about half the video telling you the things that you can do right now or should be doing right now, just like I'm going to tell you in just a couple of minutes on this video, the positives that you can control and the things that you should be doing. Now, I also want you to remember this. There's a lot going on in the world with world politics. You can't make any of your major financial decisions around politics that you see going on. Okay. Now, you have to sort of know about it, but at the same time, you have to prioritize your own finances. What's going on in your own four walls with the things that you can control. Look, I don't care if you lean left or if you lean right. If you're liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter to me. It's all politics, and you can't control what the politicians are going to do. We saw here just recently where the president of Venezuela was just captured by American forces. Will that affect things for you in your own four walls, your own household finances? Maybe, right? Maybe if you have stocks in the energy sector or something like that. But can you control it? No. So again, don't let that outside stuff drive your financial picture, right? Now let's talk about tariffs, okay? Because this matters for prices. Tariffs don't show up as a line item on your receipts, all right? Tariffs show up in higher cost, perhaps. When tariffs raise cost on imported goods, companies typically don't absorb that forever. They usually at some point pass it on to the consumer. That's a fact. Whether it's appliances, electronics, cars, doesn't matter, building materials for construction. This is one of the reasons prices don't fall very easy when inflation slows down like we've seen. So when people ask, why does everything still feel expensive? Well, tariffs may be a part of that answer. Tariffs have had some effect, but tariffs definitely haven't had the effect that everybody said they would, to the extent that they said they would yet. We're still on this kind of wait and see with tariffs, and I get it. So the verdict is not fully in on whether or not tariffs are going to make things really way more expensive like we were told. Now, put all this together, and here's what 2026 looks like for us. Economic growth is expected to be around 2%. Not really booming, but not really collapsing either. We just saw a 4.6% GDP that looked good on the surface, but we also know that there's much more to that number than what meets the eye. Now, inflation may stay a little bumpy early in the year before it eases, and the stock market could grow. Many forecasters are saying the stock market is going to grow somewhere around 6 to 7 to 8% in 2026 with some volatility. 2026 is not shaping up to be some crisis year, but it's also not a year for sloppy decisions either, because you have to move with some caution. Now, before I go into what we need to be doing as consumers and investors to bulletproof our personal finances, let me share this with you real quick. If you want a simple, structured system for managing your money in years like 2026, my book, Manage Your Way to Millions, breaks this thing down step by step. No hype, no shortcuts, no fluff. The link to this book on Amazon is in the description box below. Now, let me talk about what we should actually be doing, okay? How are we going to bulletproof our finances in 2026? The first move is simple, guys. Keep more cash, okay? Cash is not fear. Cash is time. Cash is time to think. Cash is time to sort of adjust. Cash is time to sort of avoid some of the panic. Right now, guys, a large percentage of Americans can't even cover $1,000 emergency without going into debt or without swiping a credit card. That's dangerous. That's not good. Okay. But here's the upside that a lot of people miss. Okay. Because rates are still sort of slightly elevated, cash is still earning a little bit of something in those high yield savings accounts, right? Cash gives you a safety net, and cash also gives you some flexibility. So you want to keep more money. Now, like I've said before, you don't want to have too much cash, but you need to have some cash. Emergency money is super important in times like these, especially as we see something like the labor market, the jobs market, the unemployment rate going up. Next is this. You want to lower your fixed cost, the fixed cost in your own budget. Okay, now this is important. And look, the 10-year Treasury has been hovering around 4%, which affects borrowing cost across the economy as well, just as the Fed funds rate does. Now, that means debt remains a bit on the expensive side, even though the Fed funds rate has come down. And you also want to look at ways to get out of your bad debt as well. Remember, the more money that you have locked into payments on stuff, the more fragile your financial life becomes. Get rid of any unused subscriptions, shop around for cheaper insurance, and don't fall victim to this lifestyle creep. Just because you got a raise or you got a bonus, it doesn't mean you got to go out and get that new car, right? It doesn't mean you got to now go shop somewhere besides where you used to shop when you didn't have that bonus. Student loans, if you got student loans, you want to pay them off. Credit cards, you want to keep a zero balance if you have credit cards, or you could do like me and not have no credit cards. But you want to lower these things so that you lower the pressure on you, which will result ultimately in higher resilience for you and your money. You want to keep more of your money. Here's the other reason cash matters and you want to keep more money. Opportunity. The best financial opportunities, guys, don't always come with the headlines. Matter of fact, most times they don't come with the headlines. They show up quietly when other people are stretched or panicked, right? If you have cash, you're not forced to do anything. You don't need perfect timing when you got cash. You just need some patience. Guys, debt that carries interest is heavier when the rates stay a little higher. It grows faster than income and it limits your options. If you want clarity around your debt, I do have a free debt snowball worksheet that's linked in the description box below. It can help you see everything clearly when you put it smack dab in front of you on paper, and it's going to help you take control of your debt situation. Clarity around your debt, your bad debt, lowers anxiety, okay? And clarity around this bad debt leads to progress in getting rid of it. So grab that free debt snowball worksheet in the description box below. Now, let's talk about investing in 2026. This is a big piece of what we all want to do, right? This is not the year to be guessing and speculating. 2026 is a year to follow a plan, a philosophy of your own, right? If you don't have a written plan for investing, the stock market becomes your plan. And that's when you start reacting and when you start being emotional. And you don't want to be emotional when you're trying to invest. The people who win in the stock market or who are going to win in 2026, they're not the ones who just happen to guess right. They're the people who are going to stay consistent for many, many years, right? Listen, if you can't explain why you own a stock in one sentence, you probably shouldn't own it. Returns in the stock market 2026 and beyond are not going to matter if risk forces you out or to sell at the wrong time. And so you need to have an investment portfolio that is diversified when you're talking about investing, okay? Diversification isn't about owning everything. I'm not saying you got to go out and have 20 different ETFs in your portfolio. Real intelligent diversification in terms of investing in 2026, it's going to be about making sure one mistake doesn't ruin your whole portfolio. That's the kicker, right? Strong businesses survive these slow years because they have real advantages that don't disappear overnight. Keep that in mind. So you want to make sure that when you're investing in 2026, you're investing in companies, if you're investing in single stocks, that have competitive advantages. And instead of trying to time the market, make sure in 2026 that you continue to use the strategy called dollar cost averaging, right? Where you invest the same amount consistently over time into the market. Once a week, $200. Once a month, $700, whatever it could be. That strategy alone removes a lot of emotion. And here's the reason you want to remove emotion. Emotion is what cost most people money in the stock market. Now, briefly, let me say this about 2026 moving forward, because I know there's a lot of people out here who either have a mortgage or are thinking about buying a home in 2026, right? Rates are still elevated, mortgage rates. Supply for homes and houses across the nation is still fairly tight, guys. That means patience matters more than headlines. If you're buying, focus on the math, not the fear that you're going to see in the headlines, okay? If you're waiting to refinance a current mortgage that you have, manage your expectations around that, okay? We may not see mortgage rates come down significantly to the end of 2026, maybe into 2027. Housing is a long-term decision, so don't rush it. Take your time with it. Now, listen, most financial advice is not wrong, but most financial advice nowadays is just loud because it's on TV, it's on the internet when you scroll, it's on YouTube, right? Daily predictions, Fed speculation here, social media panic. Noise creates urgency in our brain. Urgency is an emotion. Again, those emotions can create mistakes when it comes to investing. So 2026 doesn't require fear. It requires you being intentional with what you're doing around your money. The people who keep more cash, pay off that bad debt, and invest with discipline are going to be just fine, no matter what the headlines say or no matter what's going on in the big macro economy around us. You don't need perfect conditions in 2026 to win with your money. What you need is good habits. Okay? Listen. Get your free debt snowball worksheet in the description box below. If you want clarity instead of noise, grab my book over at manageyourwaytomillions.com. It's currently in the top 10 on Amazon amongst bestsellers in 2 different categories. And it's top 50 in 2 other categories on Amazon. And everything I teach, guys, the framework, the tools, the long-term strategy, it's all over at smartmoneybro.com. Hey, I hope you got some value out of this video. If you did, share this video with your people. Smash that like button below and drop me a comment. I read the comments and I want to hear your thoughts. Remember, the best person who's going to take care of the old you is the young you. Until the next video, peace.